bad is your FOMO when new technology comes out? Are you one of those people that likes to upgrade your phone every single year so you have the latest and greatest? Are you looking at all of those handheld PCs out there and wondering when are you going to jump in? Well, I've got some answers and probably some more questions to throw out your way. Let's take a look at the ROG Ally X, which I have in my hot little hands right here. This was sent to me by ASUS, by the way. It's a review unit that I have to send back, but if you have been watching the channel for a little bit and you know my ongoing saga with the ROG Ally, the original one, I bought one last year and I had it for almost a month and then it crapped out on me, and I believe it was the SD card reader, and I had to reinstall everything and it just drove me nuts, and all I bought it for was to play games on and to review stuff, and I had been enjoying the hell out of it, but when all that stuff started happening, I returned it, made a video about my experience, got lots of attention about that, lots of people that had similar kinds of experiences with the ROG Ally, and also lots of people that love the device. Well, ASUS has gone ahead and upgraded almost every kind of quibble that I had with the original ROG Ally, and that starts, I think, with moving the SD card reader, because the SD card reader on the original Ally wasn't just a problem for consumers out there, but of course we all know ASUS has been in the news because of their weird repair and return policies. Gamers Nexus was all over it, and ASUS has gone ahead and done the right thing, and they've extended the warranty on the original Ally, which just came out a year ago, which is crazy. So the SD card reader has moved on the new ROG Ally, but probably the biggest thing about the ROG Ally X is that it has double the battery power of the original Ally. And anybody that's been playing with the Ally or some of the other handheld PCs out there, let's be honest, has got this thing called battery anxiety, where you're always looking at the corner of your screen wondering when this thing is going to die on you, or when you're going to get the notifications that you have to save your game and go plug it in and charge up again. And I certainly felt that when I was playing the Ally originally, and it was kind of stressful. So they've gone to an 80 watt hour battery for the Ally X, which is double the 40 watt hour battery that's in the original Ally. They've also increased the SSD storage on the Ally X. It's now 1 terabyte as opposed to the 512, which you could easily cap out, especially if you didn't want to open it up and upgrade the SSD or stick in an SD card, which may or may not melt on you. So this has better storage, it has better battery life, and it also has better RAM. It has 24 gigabytes of RAM as opposed to the 16 gigabytes of RAM. What's the same with the Ally X and the original Ally is the core processor. The AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme is exactly the same, but it's a very, very capable little chip. It runs games beautifully, and there hasn't been an issue with getting some really high frame rates at 1920 by 1080, which is what the resolution is of this 7-inch screen, and that's also identical on the Ally X. They didn't upgrade to an OLED screen, they didn't put HDR in this screen, but it does still retain its 120 hertz capabilities. It's also a variable refresh rate screen, so it makes for smoother gameplay. And when you have games like Spider-Man Miles Morales, which takes advantage of FSR 3.0 and also that frame generation toggle, you can get some really high frame rates running at 1920 by 1080 at medium settings, and it's remarkable. The game looks absolutely beautiful. It's very comparable to the experience that I had on the PS4 Pro when I played Miles Morales for the first time on my PlayStation on my TV, and that's impressive as hell, you know, being able to zip around New York City and take care of bad guys and get into fights and change your suits and all that. I love the freaking game. I love being able to play a game at that fidelity anywhere, and that's what the Ally X offers. They also did change some of the physical specifications on the Ally X as well. They smoothed out the bumpers on the bottom of the device itself. The Ally had a little bit more of an angular kind of curve to it. This is a lot more smoothed out, and it fits more comfortably, I find, in the palm of your hand, which is actually kind of important because with the extra battery life in here and some of the other additions, this actually is a little bit of a heftier weight than the original Ally. You do feel it, but you also feel like it's way more stacked and stable. Like it's just like a tough little unit. Like everything is just packed in there, and it just feels very sturdy. I kind of like the feel of it. It feels like there's no jiggle to it. Nothing is kind of loose or anything. Not like the original Ally did either, but it just feels machined. You know what I mean? Very, very slick there. The thumbsticks for the Ally X are tightened up a little bit. They're not quite as loose as they are on the original Ally, but I never really had a problem with those. They've also tweaked the D-pad a little bit, and I've found no problems games, being able to jump into 2D platformers and stuff like Bzzzt, which is a very cool Super Meat Boy-like robot game with some really incredible challenges. It's gorgeous, and it handles just fine with the D-pad, but I have noticed that it squeaks a little bit, which is a bit weird, like the plastic is rubbing on the plastic. Not every time, but sometimes I've heard a little squeak out of the D-pad, which is strange. They've curved the left and right trigger buttons so they're a little bit more ergonomic that way. They've also simplified the back panel buttons. You've only got these two little ones. I haven't really employed them that much. I've only had this device for about a week. I didn't get any pre-release unit. This is the actual release unit, but I do have to send it back, and I'll talk about that in a second here. But the other big thing that you'll notice, at least aesthetically, is that they went with a black case for the Ally X, and this makes it look a lot more generic to my eyes. This looks a little bit like the Steam Deck, and since the Steam Deck has been just kicking ass since it launched, going with this all black colorway kind of makes it look like it's chasing the Steam Deck's coattails a little bit, which the original Ally did not do. When it came out in that Stormtrooper white and black, it just looks so fresh, so cool. I love the aesthetic, and I love that it differentiated, almost created this other camp, you know, this other sort of team. You were Team Ally or you were Team Steam Deck. And boy, I got the brunt of both of those viewpoints when I talked about the Ally a year ago, but I did like that ASUS had carved out this distinctive look for itself. This looks very standard, and I'm a little bit disappointed, quite frankly, because everything else just feels terrific on it. The buttons are great, the thumbsticks feel fine. I also love that they put two USB-C ports onto this device. Both of them can charge the device, but you can also use one of them, which is equipped with Thunderbolt 4.0, to stick an external GPU onto this thing, so you can really flush this out and use it as your home computer if you want. You could stick some super powered GPU onto this thing and just get some desktop-based performance in the games that you play, which is really damn cool. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I tend to just pick up these things to play video games on, and that's what I've been digging. And I have to be honest, it kind of drives me crazy that most of my time playing with these devices, because so many of them are on the market and new ones keep coming out all the time. I've spent so much time playing games with the little FPS counter on the screen, and I'm looking forward to turning that off. I just want to forget about everything and jump in. But that brings me to my next point on this device. It is, again, of course, a Windows-enabled device. It has the new upgraded Armory Crate software on there, so you can jump into the games, you can jump into various stores that you can access with this, which is what a Windows operating system provides. You can easily add the Epic Game Store, Xbox Game Pass, or any other game store that exists on the internet. You can add that to this device, no problem. I tend to work with most of my stuff and most of my games in Steam because I use the Steam Deck so much, but you can bounce into that. You can toggle the different color schemes on the RGB lighting around the thumbsticks, which I am a big fan of. I know it's a little sort of gamer-centric cheesy, but I kind of dig it. I like the flash of that, and I really dug it on the white shell of the original Ally. You can also adjust all of the performance parameters that you want to toggle with in there, and there's also a separate sub-menu which works very similarly to the sub-menus that you would find on the Steam Deck, where you can actually record software right from that menu, which I love to do. I love to record the screen. I'm using a lot of the footage for this review actually from games that I played and recorded right off of the Ally X, which is so handy, and I know the Steam Deck is working on that, and you've got it in beta form, but right out of the box with the Ally X, you have got the ability to start recording your software. You can also tweak the performance, and you've got a bunch of different TDP settings, so you can have a silent mode, you can have a performance mode, and you can have a turbo mode. And what's new with the hardware specifications on the Ally X is you actually get a little bit more performance out of your silent mode. It goes up a little bit, it goes up a little bit in performance. It stays at 25 watts for turbo mode when you're unplugged. You get more juice when you are plugged in, but it actually adds an incremental buff to all of the games that you play when you look at the same software on the original Ally. And I don't have all of those specs and data and all of that stuff for you. I just noticed the increase. I noticed I'd get a few more frames when I'm playing Spider-Man or something like that. And one thing that I did notice, I was playing a lot of Miles Morales on this device because I love it. And one of my favorite things about testing out these handheld PCs is I go back into my archive a little bit and I play some of my favorite games. But I was loving Miles Morales. I burned out the battery on this, which is about 2 hours to play a game at full fidelity on a device like this. And I burned out the whole thing, and then I picked up the Ally, the original one, which was sitting at about 84%, and I noticed within a half an hour I had gone down to 6%. And that is the big story here. You've got more performance, but you've got more battery life. So you can play these games at this beautiful 1920 by 1080 fidelity on this 7-inch screen, and they totally pop. I play most of my stuff in medium, and I'm getting great frame rates, and I'm really, really impressed by the quality here. And it's going to be pretty comparable on the Ally because it's using the same processor, it's got the same screen, it's going to feel pretty similar. You're just going to burn through those games super quickly. And I think it is those games, being able to play Destiny 2, being able to play Ghost of Tsushima, being able to play, Armored Core 6 and Elden Ring and all of these fancy, beautiful titles, Cyberpunk, on this architecture, and being able to travel with it. That's kind of why you want to spend that extra money and go in this direction. And on that original Ally, that story would be over pretty quickly, and you'd be feeling that battery drain anxiety very soon. And it's not like it's leaps and bounds when you jump over to the Steam Deck either. And you're also running everything at 800p or 720p as opposed to 1080 on the Allies. And you can still get some great frame rates. You can still run things like the Spider-Man games and Ghost of Tsushima, and you can add FSR 3.0 because it's also using an AMD chip. And Valve has done an incredible job at updating its software and working with developers and getting a lot of games to run just great on that device. And also the Steam Deck OLED has got the OLED screen. It's got HDR. It can run games at 90 hertz. So it is still in the running. It is still an incredible piece of hardware, but you are definitely getting just a little bit more out of the Ally X for sure. Plus, you're getting all of that Windows functionality and being able to use it as a desktop PC if you want to. Of course, you can sideload Windows onto the Steam Deck, and of course, you can sideload Linux and put SteamOS directly onto an Ally X if you want to tinker. Going in either one of those directions gives you lots of opportunity to fiddle with stuff. And man, do you still spend a ton of time fiddling with things when you're playing on handheld PCs. It's not like the Switch. It's not like you're just jumping into a game and playing it and turning it off and then turning it right back on again. You'll see resolution hiccups, and sometimes some piece of software will work beautifully and another piece of software won't. And that's on both platforms. That's on the Steam Deck, and that's definitely on the Allies as well. But I absolutely do enjoy having that comparison available to me. But I'm not like everybody out there, not everyone out there is reviewing video games and needs both of these devices. And I think you kind of have to look at your individual situation. Maybe you already have a handheld PC. Maybe you already are an owner of the Ally. Do you want to upgrade to the Ally X? Maybe you've got a Steam Deck. Maybe you've got a Steam Deck OLED. And so there's a lot of questions in there. Or maybe you've been on the sidelines watching this hurricane of devices come flying through, and every month there's a brand new thing with slightly increased specs or some cool hook that's unique about them that makes you sort of have that FOMO and you're wondering when to jump in. Well, I have some recommendations here, and it really comes down to that value proposition and that equation there. The Ally X, I think, right now is probably that target sweet spot, best-in-class handheld PC experience. There's a lot of really nice wins in there, and like I say, ASUS has done a lot of, making up over the last year since they released the original Ally, and they've done a lot of reaching out to the community to make things right. I think they still have some work to do, and I think there's probably still some valid hesitations and reservations that people have out there about jumping into another ASUS product here right now. But the Ally X is pretty damn sweet. The thing about it, though, is that it's pretty damn pricey as well. It's $800 in the States, and I'm in Canada, I'm in Vancouver, and the price for this thing is $1,099 in Canadian dollars. So it crosses that $1,000 threshold. It works out to over $1,200 when you factor in the taxes on it. Meanwhile, the Steam Deck is at $819 Canadian, and I think it's $650 American. And so it's below that $1,000 threshold, and it's a couple $100 to almost $300 in difference depending on the territory that you're looking at. And when I think about it, the Steam Deck OLED offers most of the experience available to you on the Ally X. It doesn't have that external GPU functionality quite like this. It doesn't have the 1080p, but it does have an OLED screen. It does have HDR. It does have 90 hertz as opposed to 120 hertz with this device. It also has the Steam OS interface right out of the box, which is really, really clean. It's very elegant. It's very console-like. And it also has Valve working behind the scenes with its many, many partners across the industry to try to help them tune their games to run on that platform. And we've seen great success out of that. And a lot of really big games are running quite well still on the Steam Deck OLED, and it is a wonderful device for diving into your backlog of games, things that you may have not played ever, that you bought on some Steam sale or something years ago. It's not as easy to fiddle with and tune if you're not familiar with Linux as it probably will be to fiddle with this device as a Windows-based system. It's also maybe not as flexible because this is a Windows-based system, and this operates at a better fidelity, but that price difference is a pretty big deal. And honestly, even though the Steam Deck doesn't have the battery life of the Ally X, the battery that's in the Steam Deck is actually very good, and because it's so fleshed out to just be a gaming system, you can actually get some pretty decent time off of the battery there. If you're playing sort of 2D experiences on the Steam Deck, you can get a lot of life out of the battery over there. So I think if you don't have a handheld PC and you're not necessarily that interested in having the latest and greatest in terms of horsepower, the Steam Deck OLED at that 1 terabyte setting, so the same storage, I think that still is the direction to go. And then spend that extra money that you might have spent on an Ally X on some software. Now, if you are a hardcore PC player and you love to play the AAA stuff and you want to stay on top of the new releases, I think the Ally X is going to have a nice long run, probably a good couple of years, because the release rate of these devices is pretty fast and furious. And if you're looking at the Ally X, you probably have a lot of FOMO. You don't want to miss out on the horsepower that this thing has, plus that battery life. And so I do think it's worth the money in terms of all the technical specifications that are in this device. It's just a hefty investment, and you might not have that much money left over for games after you buy this thing. But one thing I will say is that 1 terabyte of storage, and I've been noticing this because I have a 1 terabyte card on my Switch. I have a 1 terabyte SD card on my Steam Deck OLED with the 512 gigabytes of storage. I've got the 1 terabyte in my Ally X, and I did pop in an SD card that I just have used infrequently. I feel like 1 terabyte is honestly, it's enough, because when you get into more than 1 terabyte with software, and I don't know if you guys can back me up with this or not in the comments, but when you get more than 1 terabyte worth of storage to put all your games on, you just load it up and you spend so much time looking through all of these games trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to play. It's like you get, box blind or something like that. You get this apprehension, like you're frozen with choice. There's too many things to choose from. Conversely, if you only go for the 512 gigabytes that you would get in the original Ally, I feel like that's too little, because that's what I've been playing with the original Ally. I didn't put an SD card in there. I didn't want to melt it. I didn't want to chance it. And so I've just stayed with the SSD that's built into the Ally, and I filled it up right away, and I keep having to erase games and stick new games on, and it just feels like I have a tiny little menu of titles. With 1 terabyte worth of storage on this, or your Steam Deck, or your Nintendo Switch, you're looking at a pretty sizable collection of titles, big and small, that you can jump into. And I think that's pretty good. So I don't think you necessarily need to upgrade your SSD unless you want to with this device. And I don't think you necessarily have to pop in an SD card unless you want to with this. So that $1,100 Canadian, $800 American price, you're kind of good to go out of the box with this. If you bought a new Ally right now, the original Ally, you're going to save a little bit because it's dropped in price. I think it's about $650 US for a brand new Ally, but you'll probably want to invest in more storage, so there's some expense there, and you're probably going to want to invest in a battery pack, so there's some more to invest there. That puts you into this department. I'd say just go for the Ally X and spend that extra money in that direction and just have it all in one here. Now, if you already have an Ally and you're looking at this and you've got severe FOMO, hey, listen, if you can sell your original Ally and get a decent amount of money back for it, and if you love that experience, then yes, the Ally X is pretty damn sweet, and I do think it's a much better platform. I just wish it came in white. But keep in mind, this isn't the Ally 2, and we know that the Ally 2 is in the works. We know that the Steam Deck 2 is in the works. We know that PlayStation, well, we have a pretty good idea that PlayStation is going to bring out a new PlayStation Portable that's going to have some really cool functionality. That's in the works. We know Switch 2 is in the works, and we have a pretty good indication that Xbox is probably working on something. And then there's the wider competition that exists around all of that. It's an incredible time to be a handheld gamer, so I understand that FOMO. But for now, I'm going to be bouncing between the Ally X and the Steam Deck OLED and testing out PC games that way. So yes, I am keeping my pre-order because I did pre-order this device and I'm going to hang on to it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a score for what I've played so far. And I'm going to say, based on all of its value proposition and the horsepower and the fun and the ergonomics, I think this is pretty damn great. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10, and I'll come back when I've had some extended time with my personal system, and I'll give you my thoughts on how the Ally X is holding up and how I'm feeling playing games on this device as we go forward. But I am really happy to see that ASUS is responding to its criticism, and it's also investing heavily in this department, in this handheld PC department. I think this competition is going to inspire a lot of innovation, and it's going to make it very, very fun for all of us that like to play games on the go. So the Ally X is pretty damn cool, and I don't know if I solved it for you, but I definitely gave you some things to think about. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button and consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you so much for your support. We will see you soon, and until then, play forever.